us. Let's get back to the studio in Portsmouth, where we have live with us another John, and this is John Bell, and John Bell is running for sheriff in Virginia Beach. He's the Democratic candidate for sheriff. That is a constitutional office, and he's running against a longtime sheriff there, Ken Stoley. John Bell, good to have you back, sir.
Good morning, John. How are you?
Never better on this Friday, TGIF. Hey, John, let me ask you something. I want to talk about sanctuary cities a minute because we've got a lot of confusion here about sanctuary cities because it's becoming a centerpiece of Ed Gillespie's campaign for governor. He's running ads, some of them on my show, saying that the Democratic candidate, Ralph Northam, is a supporter of sanctuary cities where gang members like MS-13 could be potentially harbored. But then I get the Democrats on, John, like Terry McAuliffe, and they tell me straight out, well, Virginia doesn't have any sanctuary cities, so I don't know what they're talking about. Which is it?
Yeah, well, my opinion is that, basically as a law enforcement officer, my job as a police officer for 40 years in Virginia Beach was to enforce the law. And for about 6 years, I ran a detective bureau, and it's a matter of enforcing the laws. And that's what I would plan to do as a sheriff. And I keep asking people, sanctuary cities, what is a sanctuary city? Do you safe harbor? What is it? To me, it's just a matter when it comes from a law enforcement perspective, it's just enforcing the laws of the Commonwealth and the nation. So
in your view, there is no sanctuary cities. I mean, if you're in Virginia Beach and you run across a criminal breaking the law, whether it be from ICE or something else, that's it. I mean, they're either breaking the law or not, right?
That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. And again, for 40 years, I think we did a pretty good job putting people in jail that needed to be there. And my position is I don't care where you're from, what you look like. If you break the law, you break the law. And my responsibility is to enforce the law and to take action. And like I said, for about 6 years, when I ran the detective bureau, we were pretty good at that, finding people in the community who broke the laws, who victimized our citizens, and taking action. And I plan to do the same thing as sheriff, is just to enforce the laws of the Commonwealth, the city of Virginia Beach, and the nation.
Now, John, you have made an issue in this campaign. I find this interesting. You've made an issue of the Stoley family in politics. And right on your website, you say, end the dynasty, which is kind of funny. So you kind of read that. You say, end the dynasty, and then you list the family dynasty. Chris Stoley, Virginia House of Delegates, Ken Stoley, Virginia Beach Sheriff, Cullen Stoley, Virginia Beach Commonwealth's Attorney, and then Siobhan Stoley Donovan, State Senator. But, I mean, if people want to elect Stoleys because they like them or they like the way they govern, what difference does it make whose family they're with?
Well, it's not a question of a family, which family. It's a question of just having too much control and too much power in one position. And you left out a couple of people. We're talking about one of his captains, Rocky Holcomb, who he's basically, in my opinion, pushed out to the House of Delegates. A couple other people I understand who are reading law, who I'm sure his intent is to push them out. You talk about his captain in the sheriff's office, who's also the chair of the Republican Party of Virginia Beach, and it concerns a lot of people is just too much partisan politics and too much control in that sheriff's office. And the League of Women Voters did a survey that we both took part in, and they asked, should the sheriff's office be an elected position? And my opinion was, yes, it should be. And it should be so that you don't have any control, political control or influence on a public safety organization, which the sheriff's office is. And right now, it's not only a possibility of political influence, but it's political control in that office. And that office should be nonpartisan. It should be about serving the citizens of Virginia Beach and not about serving any particular party. It's not his family. I have nothing against his family. But as an example, you mentioned his brother, Colin. If you have an issue, something is going on in that jail, a question of something needs to be investigated, who do you take it to? You take it to the Commonwealth attorney, who happens to be the brother of the sheriff. And November 7th, the citizens will make a decision if they're happy with all of that power being contained in one particular family or one organization. Because, again, it's not just a family. It's the nepotism and cronyism that's existing in that office. His undersheriff, I'll give you an example, is a gentleman who was his partner when they worked narcotics. That's his only qualification, is he was his partner. If that's not an example of cronyism, I don't know what is. And it's an insult to all of those men and women who have served that organization for decades to have someone come in whose only experience and qualifications is being a detective and being put in that position of responsibility over these people who have served that organization for decades.
I got to tell you, John, that is a compelling argument because you're right. I mean, I know Colin Stolley, great guy, and I think he's a pretty effective Commonwealth's attorney. But you're right. I mean, if you've got an issue and you got to bring it to the Commonwealth's attorney, and it has to do with Ken Stolley's jail, and he's his brother, and they're carving up the turkey at Thanksgiving dinner,
Right.
I guess it's a little tough to get anything done, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I really get what you're saying. I mean, I'm not saying that it's bad. I mean, the people have the right to elect who they want, but I would see that as being a little problematic, right?
Right.
And then you go to Rocky Holcomb, really nice guy, House of Delegates member, but you know that his ascension to that position, came from the Stolley organization. There's no question,
Right.
No,
Exactly.
no question. It's not that he was, he ran for the school board and then he ran for council. It's not like DeSteph or Davis. I mean, they were school board, then they were city council, then they ran for an open seat. I mean, Taylor wins. He goes to Congress, seat opens. Rocky Holcomb shows up, and there's no opposition, no primary, no caucus. He's just the nominee.
He was anointed.
He was anointed. And I'm not saying he's a bad guy.
No, he's not.
He's going
No.
to probably win because that's a Republican district. I could probably win there. That's about the only place I could win. But, I mean, it is a little over the top, and even that raised an eyebrow for me because I didn't really get into the detail of it, but that was somebody that they just said, well, this is our guy. We'll just put him in there. And there was not a lot of debate going on about who would have it.
Exactly. And
So
again, you mentioned Ken being a nice guy. I went to the police academy with Ken in 1976. I voted for Ken before. Again, I believe in voting for the person who's best qualified for the position. And when he was in Richmond, I voted for Ken. And I know Rocky, I know Colin. I've worked with him when I ran the detective bureau on the cases that my detectives built. So I know the family. I know them. I don't know his brother Chris as well, but Ken and Colin, Rocky, nice guy. Met his mother, nice lady. But it's about that too much power being concentrated in one particular office.
Okay, so you talk about restoring teamwork and protocol and training. I mean, do you have any evidence that Ken Stolley as sheriff has not done the proper training or that there's no teamwork going on? Do you have any evidence of that?
It's not a question of them not doing any. I just think that we can take that organization to the next level of excellence, in my opinion. With the police department, my part of my division was our training, and I trained the officers, which can be transferred to deputies, as an example, to how to interact with juveniles. The juvenile brains are different, so I had our training division train our officers how to interact with juveniles, realize how they think differently than adults. I like to see the deputies do that as well. I like to have them more involved in the community. It gets back to keeping young people out of jail. And I think that having programs, having deputies ingrained in the community to mentor, role model, to keep these young people out of jail, to keep them away from gangs. Prevention is a lot smarter and cheaper than incarceration. And my job will be to keep the citizens safe. And if I can do that by keeping young people away from guns, keeping them away from gangs, keeping them out of jail, it's keeping my citizens safe. And that's my job. But even when it comes to training, I look at things that we can do, reentry programs, for example. My opponent took office January 2010, I believe, and he didn't start a reentry program until August of 2014. That's 4.5 years that he could have been providing training for inmates so they could reintegrate into society, provide support for them when they were released. And, again, it's about safety for my citizens. And I feel that if we provide that training, it's not soft on crime, but smart. And if we provide training, and I've talked to people preparing for January 1st, business people that are ready to come in, provide training to inmates so that when they're released, they can have a support system, they can have the training, so they can have jobs, they can pay taxes, and keep us safe. It's about us being safe, and it's not soft on crime, it's smart. If we provide training for them, we provide jobs, they're less likely to re-victimize us, and that's my responsibility. So I'm just trying to bring the experience I had with the police department when it came to training to do that. And I've talked to people, and matter of fact, a gentleman who has a program in Norfolk that he works with the sheriff's office and the police department where they have the officers and the deputies mentor and role model young people in school. It's about building those relationships, trying to keep young people on the straight and narrow. So I'm not saying Ken hasn't done some good things. He has. And I'm happy to say and flattered that some of the things he's done are ideas that I proposed when I ran in 2009, the treatment of the mentally ill. I was the program manager for, again, when it comes to training, for a program where we trained our officers how to interact with those who are mentally ill, crisis intervention team program. And that's very effective. When his deputies at that time were part of the program that I manage. So it's a matter of training them for that. There's so much we can do. Electronic monitoring for those who are nonviolent offenders. That's something I proposed in 2009 as well. And but there are different things we can do. But there's so much we can do to train the deputies, to ingrain them in the community so that we can keep people out of jail. It's a lot smarter and cheaper, and it keeps our citizens safe, I believe.
We're with Democratic candidate for sheriff in Virginia Beach, John Bell. John is running against incumbent Republican Ken Stoley for sheriff. Stoley running for a third term there, and part of the Stoley family. Obviously, everybody knows that. That election is held with everything else statewide on November 7th. So be sure and get out and vote on November 7th for whoever is the candidate of your choice, but you got to get involved. John Bell, tough question. How do you win as a Democrat in Virginia Beach? I mean, you look at Virginia Beach, everybody in the state Senate, Republican. House of Delegates, Republican. Congress, Republican. Mayor, Republican. Everybody's a Republican. How is a Democrat going to win in Virginia Beach?
Well, and John, and I'm very open. I am a Democrat, but I believe that partisan politics, and again, that goes back to my platform, partisan politics doesn't have any place in the sheriff's office. So it's a nonpartisan position, and we discussed this when I was on your program before. It's labeled nonpartisan, but it's obvious by what's happening in the sheriff's office now it's not nonpartisan. When I work with the police department, I work with Mayor Sessoms. I work with Scott Ridgel in the community programs. I work with Glenn Davis, who's in the House of Delegates. All of them are Republicans. So to keep our citizens safe, the programs that I work with as far as being a liaison for our community outreach, I had to work with Republicans, and I plan to work with Republicans as the next sheriff. It's about crossing over to work with people, to compromise, which nowadays, unfortunately, is a dirty word. And again, it's about me reaching out, and I've gone to Republican events. I've gone to their breakfasts. I've had them reach out to me, people who are Republicans, who say, it's about us working together to keep our streets and citizens safe. So I think a person who happens to be a Democrat who's going to run the sheriff's office, which he's committed to making a nonpartisan organization, I think has a pretty good chance of winning as a Democrat. And again, I don't plan to be the Democratic sheriff. I plan to be the sheriff of all citizens of Virginia Beach.
All right. As sheriff, I mean, it's a constitutional partisan office, but you have to behave in a nonpartisan way, right, in order to get things done. I mean,
right.
You got to work with the police and everything else. So
exactly.
Just isn't a good time for partisan politics, but that is the way it's set up in the Commonwealth. I got a couple minutes, John, and I'm just going to ask you straight out. Ken Stoley's done a lot of good things there. He's got a big support base. People know him because he was in the House of Delegates prior to that, and he's been in law enforcement a long time. If you were to be sheriff, what is the first thing that you would change? I mean, real change, not just talk about it on a platform, but you get sworn in. What is the first act that you would have that people would say, okay, this is different than what Stoley did?
I would say the first thing, and again, all the divisions the commands I've had with the police department, I don't believe in just going in and turning the place upside down. I believe in going in, observing, seeing what's working well, what's not working so well. But I mentioned right up front that one of the things I want to have is the deputies more visible in the community, to have them be more part of the community, working with our citizens and working with our young people. And that would be one of the first things I would do, is to have the deputies be more involved and be more visible. They're visible when it comes to doing landscaping for the city, which are contracts that my opponent has with the city to make money. But I want the deputies to be seen as part of the community, not apart from the community. Have them more visible in the schools. They do some things. From time to time, they may stop by the school and do a photo op, but I think they need to be on a regular basis. So having them more involved and ingrained in our community, trying to break that cycle, that school to prison pipeline cycle that currently exists with our young people, to have someone who shows they care, that would be one of the first things I would do.
All right. That certainly is a tangible action. I want to thank you for your time today. John Bell, running for sheriff, Virginia Beach, against Ken Stoley. For more information, you can go to his website, John Bell, the number 4, sheriff.com. John Bell, the number 4, sheriff.com. John, thanks for being with us. Thanks for coming to the studio. Really appreciate the time.
John, thanks again. I appreciate you having me on.